This is a 1986 Bullet Boat 17V. The 17V measured in at a little over 17.5 feet in length and was rated for a maximum horsepower of 150. This 17V featured purple metallic gel coat, silver pinstripes, and a black flat gel coat on the side, and I can promise you, looked like a purple blur going across the water. Bullet Boats was established in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1980 by a small group of people who wanted to build a quality tournament bass boat that also provided extreme performance. Known for their speed and overall performance, the Bullet Boat brand has been a Tennessee River tournament staple for many years and has made its way on the national scene with pros like Buddy Gross and Andy Morgan. As I was walking around the 17V, I noticed this handle was a little loose. This boat's rated for a 150, but it's got a 200 hanging on the back. The reason this is loose is there's been a lot of people that have ridden in this seat right here that have been like, get me out of this purple devil! Oh, what's that? Raw power. That's what that is. There's an energy that comes from this boat like no other boat I've ever been in. The 17V features this small cup holder and tray for your belongings to blow out when you're running 90 miles an hour in this purple and black coffin. This particular 17V featured 2 live wells behind the seats that you don't need because you're running past most of the fish at 90 miles an hour. But also, what we found when we got to filming, a nice bottle of 1986 Amber Falls wine. Most 17V owners were known for having large chiropractor bills for having to do this all the time. You good, Ricky? Huh? The 17V was clearly built more for speed than it was fishing, and nothing speaks more to that than this rod locker that you better only have 3 rods if you're gonna use. The 17V is a perfect choice for my guest today, Mr. Carl Jocumsen, who is now a Tennessean by way of Australia and loves to go fast. I'm Luke Dunkin, and this is Boats and Pros.
That is old school.
What's up?
Hey, mate.
Are we fist bumping? Are we shaking? What are we doing? Let's fist bump. Okay. It's the new world.
New age.
It's the first Boats and Pros in the new world. So
no.
You're now. So I grew up, born and raised a Tennessee boy. So I have seen these things my entire life, and I thought for the Carl episode of Boats and Pros, I got to take it to Tennessee, man. You're a Tennessean now.
Yep, that's awesome.
From another continent to Tennessee, so it's not Tennessee colors, unfortunately.
I like the color. I like the color. Bit of purple and black.
So Bullet Boat started in 1980, and this is a 1986 model. So this thing is almost as old as the company is. And I know you've seen these running around on the Tennessee River and on tour. We've seen guys like Andy Morgan and Buddy Gross, and some of these guys have put these things in the spotlight now, but for my whole life, this is the tournament boat on the Tennessee River. So maybe not this exact one, which is a 17-footer with a 200, but we'll, if the rain will ever leave us,
we'll get out there.
We'll take it for a spin. And you've got, look, man, they cut the rub rail out. They've got their black lights. They look like Blue Waters too, so sponsor appropriate. I don't know what the deal is and what the design was on the offset seats.
Sit back. It's so aerodynamic.
You know how when you're driving with your buddy that goes fast and he always looks at you to make sure you're looking at his GPS? I think that's so you can see the GPS, because these guys are all about speed. So if you're behind the GPS, if there were a GPS. We're going 90.
No windscreen?
No.
You just look back and your towing will be gone.
This is
it'll just be a bare seat.
This is just full sin. The entire boat weighs 700 pounds. Everything. And listen. There's not a lot.
Nothing in there.
There's not a lot there.
There's not
a lot there. So this was built for speed, not for comfort, I think.
We might have to have a race. This would be a pretty good little, that would be the challenge.
That's not a terrible idea. I don't think I can drive it. Somebody said this morning, I was talking to a friend of mine coming over, I told him I'm filming with Carl, and they said, what happens if you were to injure Australian's native son? You're going to have an entire continent mad at you for Boats and Pros. And I'm like, that's a pretty good point there. So I don't know.
We're going to be safe.
We're going to be safe. We're going to just idle in circles, stay in our lane. What I like about it is the trim switch that's just right here, just in case your buddy's hanging on for dear life as he blows out, he can trim you down to slow it down so he can climb back in.
I want to see this rod locker deal, if that's what it is.
Yes, it's the side rod locker. Look at this.
That's crazy.
So you've got your foam rod holders.
It was ahead of its time.
It really was.
It's doing well. You could have, you could have 3 in there.
You could get 3, but they'll go a long ways up in there.
That's awesome. What about the live well situation?
It's got 2. It's got 2. They're offset. And so everything that they've ever designed, because, I mean, obviously they build a lot of tournament boats, but everything is built around speed, you know. And so they do put things in places that a lot of boat companies don't. But, like, this was a live well, cool. And then this is a live well.
Wow.
So you had 2, shapes. But they're offset. That's a little TH trim control right there. And there's a wine bottle in there. It's a wine bottle.
Does that come standard?
It does. I think that came with the. I think that came with the '86 model. You could not tear it up.
That's
could not break it. Like all the issues we have today, dude. You could run this thing through a brick wall and not break it. But that was the first trolling motor I ever had on like a 85 Bumblebee. I think that's what we had.
I have not seen that one.
Yep.
That's an old school.
Yep. Jocumsen.
Cable driven.
Cable driven. And dude, you could not.
You can't break that.
You can't break it. Could not break that thing. My formative years running a trolling motor, learning to run a trolling motor, we're on that pedal right there. Like I'll never forget it.
Flush mounted. They had it.
No, ours wasn't. So this was an upgrade.
That was always the crazy thing, was the big pedal like this. Up.
Yeah.
Until when you got it flush mounted, that was the deal.
I swear some of my back issues I have to this day are from doing this. My dad used to take me to a lake that was trolling motor only on his way to work when I was like 15, 16. 15 because I couldn't drive. He would dump me in the water at daylight and come back and get me at night.
Yeah.
But you could not use the outboard to put it on the trailer, so you had to use the trolling motor. So it's like this prop, you're propped up.
Drive it.
I'm putting it on the trailer one day, didn't pull it up fast enough, and ripped the entire trolling motor out of the fiberglass on his boat.
Oh no.
In front of my dad. Bad night at the Dunkin house. But that's what I think of every time I see one of these old trolling motors.
Every fisherman has very, very similar stories and upbringings of that, and that same. Even in Australia, we have trolling motor only lakes, and that's where I grew up. And we'd put the boat on, we'd have a motor, you'd have to have it kicked up, and you'd have to do the same thing because they wouldn't let you do it.
And if you don't pull it at the right time,
it's over.
You hit a runner, you're over with. So it's a little different Boats and Pros. Obviously, this is Boats and Pros in the Jocumsen shop here on top of a mountain, by the way. If this thing had weighed 1 more pound, my truck wouldn't have pulled it up the mountain. The first thing I have is this awkward for you because I feel like that you're on trial for murder and I'm really trying to get to the bottom of it.
I'll tell you anything right now.
just get me out of this boat.
Whatever I'm gonna do.
A little different Boats and Pros today. Carl was kind enough to let us back into the shop and hide from the rain. And hopefully it'll blow out a little bit later so we can go run this bad boy because we know it's going to be fast and Carl likes to go fast. But so I was looking through pictures on your Instagram and you actually made a recent post. And I thought it was cool because we were doing Boats and Pros this week of your first boat.
Yep.
Tell us about it. That's what I love to hear from pros. So tell me about that first boat.
Yeah, there's always that one. The one you actually saw on Instagram was our second boat. That was the good boat that we got. The first one, definitely remember it because it was the day I figured out that Santa wasn't actually real.
That's okay.
I was like,
so Australian Santa is the same as American. It's the same deal.
He's just hotter. It's summer, so he wears a cut-off singlet. Shorts, cut-off singlet, and a pair of thongs, and he's Santa.
Santa and flip-flops.
Yeah, that's
not
the
thongs.
Aussie.
You Americans get your head out of the gutter. Flip-flops.
He's Santa's a bit different in Australia.
I love this. I'm learning. Okay.
So I was probably I don't know how old, under 10, but I remember my granddad bought it, and it was an old wooden boat. I've got some pictures of it still. We'll dig in and get them.
Yeah.
And I looked out the window and it was in the yard. My granddad had bought it for us for Christmas. And I was like, how did Santa get that there? There's no freaking way.
That's amazing.
So apparently Santa brought it, and that's when I got real sketchy about Santa. I was like, I don't know about him. But yeah, we got that, and it was an old wooden boat. It was called Bojangles. My dad called it Bojangles. I think that's a piano player or something.
Okay. I'm not sure. I'm a music guy, but I don't know. I've heard the song Mr. Bojangles. But
I think it's something to do with that. So it had Bojangles written up the side. It had 2 wooden oars with the holes each side, and you would just row. and we had Kubi Dam, this little lake about 20 minutes from our house, trolling motor only. So we would go out there and we'd row, and even when it was brand new, it would leak, this boat, and we had to go when the water would like get up over your ankles. That's when you knew, like, okay, we start rowing back and get back to the ramp. So old Bojangles was the very first boat, and we had that for years. My dad was a vet, and he's just recently retired, but he is high stress, high sort of strung job, and he would just love to get out in the water, and just, that was his like chill time. But for me, I was like psycho, digging worms, yabbies, catching yabbies. I had rods and reels, and so Dad would just go out there and take me and sit there, but I'd be all over it, spots, anchor, get in position, and doing all of that. And then that's pretty much kind of where it all started.
So did your dad fish? Is that, and your grandfather? So is that where that came from, that love of fishing, or was it something you discovered on your own? How did that start for you?
It was, yeah, everyone kind of has a different story, but Dad definitely wasn't into fishing. And most of my family, but on my mum's side, her dad was into fishing, and with his like brothers and uncles. So I sort of got the fishing from their side. But for me, we would go camping on the beach as a kid, you know, real young, and everyone would be playing games, cricket on the beach, doing all sorts of stuff, and I would just have this rod and reel, and I'd just sit on the beach by myself, never catching anything. I was just super intrigued, and Dad and everyone would be like, come and do something, and I'd be on there for 3-4 hours just holding this fishing rod on the beach.
Unbelievable.
And I just sort of, there was something about it when I got that first bite and I caught that fish. I was just sort of done from about 4 or 5 years old, and I like literally have never lost that passion ever since. And my granddad would then take us out to, me and my 4 cousins, and then we'd go in Western Queensland, Australia, like middle of nowhere, 2 hours from any house, shop, you had nothing. And we would get bogged and we'd be stuck. It would always be some crazy story, crazy adventure, but that's what I loved about it, you know. We'd just camp on the river, have a fire, and just, you know, it wasn't as much about the fishing as much as it was like that adventure and the friends and your cousins and just all the stories that used to come from it. You've
been known for traveling around the country. You live in your Lance, the Lance life. You got your camper. So when we fished the tour against each other, it was the first time I've ever really been around you a lot in that competitive sense, and you would leave a tournament, and if there wasn't an off limits on the next lake, I would, you know, on social media, you're going and setting up shop and you're trying to learn as much. Is that kind of where that camping lifestyle came from, or those days? Is that why that's always appealed to you? Yeah, 100%. So like the lakes in Australia, they're like in the middle of nowhere. There's no hotel or servo gas station near it. So like you pack up and you go, and it's like going in the middle of nowhere. You're going.
Yeah,
when
you're going
you're
going
there.
fishing, you're there 3-4 days, and you're not, that's it. And so we've got it's called a swag, and it's a roll-up bed. They don't really have them here in the US yet, but it's like a canvas, 2 canvas pieces with an inch thick foam in it and a sleeping bag and a pillow, and you would roll it up and have 2 straps over it. And so the back of your truck would have 4 swags in it, a big esky full of food. You'd fill the boat up, charge everything, and away you go. And so out my tournaments, you slept in that swag under the stars every night, and I loved it. Like every second of it was that campfire and the water edge being there, and your boat pulled up and you were going fishing. And so we rough it in Australia. Like that's what we call, that's actually nice camping. Like you had a roll out swag.
Glamping. I think they call that glamping in the United States.
When you had a roll out swag. And so when I came here, I lost that feel because it was hotels and busy cities right next to the lakes, and I didn't like it. I was like, you're sitting in the middle of a city and then you're trying to go to this natural lake and fish and figure these fish out, and it took me years to start to work out, like, man, I've lost that fun adventure camping side of fishing, which is what I fell in love with.
Yeah.
And so that's how I started to get back to it.
That's awesome. Awesome. So explain the difference for people in an Australian bass
Yeah.
and a largemouth bass here in the States, if you can do that, because people hear, he bass fishes, but it's different.
Yeah,
it's totally different than what we do here.
Yeah, so we don't have largemouth, smallmouth, or spotted bass in Australia. So none of those species, but we have an Australian bass, native to Australia only. And I would say it's like a hybrid, a white bass and a striper smallmouth cross. And they did a lot of things, but all of our techniques would come from either Japan or America. We would watch the videos, read the books. We didn't have internet back there, but it was all like DVDs, videos, and you would watch ESPN and watch Bassmaster. So spinnerbaits, and we would learn those techniques, and they worked on our fish. But in Australia, we have the Murray cod, and then we have barramundi, and then bass. And if you combined all of those, they sort of make a largemouth. So that's why I was just a good fisherman, as far as like I'd fish for everything and travel all over Australia chasing different species, and that held me in good for when I came here, like as in an understanding of the techniques. And that's why I fell in love with the largemouth, is when I got here, it was like this ultimate fish rolled into one. That's how I see them. They're just like this, they're like the ultimate predator species to chase, because they adapt and do everything. And so when I got here, that's really what intrigued me.
And depending on what part of the country you're in, they act differently. And we talk Tennessee River, they get in the current and they do these things. And then you go to a natural lake with no current and they act totally different. So I could totally see that.
That was the hardest thing to do. Like for me, we had 4 or 5 lakes that I went to my whole life, knew them like the back of my hand, but they fished very similar right through. And so when I came here, I fished Lake Mead, and I thought that's how the whole country was. And I was like, I'm gonna whoop some ass here. It's gonna be fun. And then I found myself in the Red River, and I was like, what am I doing here?
So I wanted to ask you about that. When you won the Australian Bass Angler of the Year, right? Or was it the championship?
Like the championship,
and that gave you a berth to the U.S. Open as a co-angler in what, 2000 and... was it 4?
Actually 2000.
2000?
No, 2008.
2008,
yeah.
Okay, and you, in that tournament you fish as a co-angler, it's a shared weight deal.
Yeah.
So the pros and the co's are kind of working together, but you drew Fred Rumbanis, you drew out with Boom Boom.
Yeah.
And I read a quote from him that he basically said to you, because you were catching them on like little bitty light line,
2 pound and 4 pound line.
Yeah, and he said, dude, you can do this.
Yeah.
So it was Fred that basically gave you the confidence in one statement.
Yep, so years before that, sitting at my house in Australia watching ESPN, and this guy won $100,000 on a frog on Lake Murray, and that was Fred Rumbanis. And I remembered him pulling out that fish, and the way he reacted gave me chills. That was some of the early beginnings of me going, man, I was starting to do a lot in Australia on the tournament side of things, and that was always in my mind, like that's the ultimate goal. But like it seems so out of reach, you'd never know you're ever going to get there. So I drew 2 anglers 2 days in a row at the US Open, and I'm like, I caught them because I was using 2 pound braid and 4 pound leader, and I was using 20-foot leaders with an FG knot. And so in that crystal clean water, I was just getting a million bites. And so they were freaking out because I was catching so many fish and doing well, and I think I was 7th. And I walked up going into the final day, and I looked at the board and it said Fred Rumbanis. And I was like, holy hell, that's Fred. So it's final day, drew Fred, and we went out there and we literally just had a blast. And the same thing happened. I caught him, and then I caught big bass with him. And we like got it in the boat and we just lost it, high-fiving, running up and down the boat. And I ended up coming 2nd and got big bass, and Fred jumped from like 20th to top 5 in the US Open. And but the whole time, once I started catching him and he was saying, he just kept building me up, like, man, saying, you can do this. And then I'm asking him the questions. How does it work? What do you do? Where would you go? So I'm just into him about every bit of information. And then I got a 3-week experience in America. I fished that US Open. And I flew home to Australia, and I sold everything that I've got. I saved up for a year, and I flew over here.
And never, since then you've been...
Never came back, really.
That's incredible to me, because your story, there was an article I read, and they termed it the impossible dream. And I don't think there's any other way to describe what you've done to me, because you're talking to a guy that I grew up watching those same Bassmaster shows, and reading the magazines and things. But also my dad, we're going and fishing all these different lakes and things. And I had that opportunity, but it would have never crossed my mind that a guy that's the same age as me, halfway across the freaking world, all the way across the world, it's the next day there right now. Right? It's tomorrow in Australia. It's future land. Is watching those same shows, reading those same magazines, but eventually comes over here to do that. Dude, there are so many people that never get a chance to do what you've done, let alone come from another continent. So it's amazing to me to see how you've done it, but you've done it through one thing. It's hard work. You represent hard work to me. Did you get that? I mean, it sounds like your dad, he's a vet, he's working hard. Is that something that's in your family? Is that work ethic just in your DNA, or is it something that you realize once you got here, hey, I've got to make up for lost time? Talk about that some.
It's probably like everything in your life, I think your different motivations like help you, but it's more than anything, it was like I always had something to prove, because if you were like, for me, fishing, my first 10 years of my life was phenomenal. My parents were incredible. I had an awesome upbringing, but then family life got crazy. My parents split up, and at school, I loved fishing, and I was seen like a bit of an outcast, and I didn't, and no one understood it, and I got bullied like crazy. My school days were hell, and I hated every day. And my mum was amazing. Like in high school, I used to ring her in grade like 9 or 10 and tell her I was having a bad day, and she would drive and pick me up and take me to the lake, and she'd have the boat hooked up, and I'd go there and drop the boat in. Like, she supported me like crazy, but the fishing was my escape from the craziness that sort of started happening in that 10, 12 years and older. My life but everything was hectic and crazy, but when I was on the lake, everything was amazing. But my teachers and people around me always telling me, like, shouldn't be doing that, it's going to take you nowhere, getting bullied for doing it. So I had a lot of pent up, like, I'm going to make it, I'm going to prove everyone wrong, like that. So failure was just like never an option. So when I would compete in Australia, even then people were like, far out, he's competing in tournaments in Australia. That was a win for me. I was like, and then bass fishing started getting on TV, and then I was on TV, and the boats were getting better, and they were starting to import American boats, and fishing was starting to become cool as I like got out of school. So like it was more a thing of like motivation and trying to show people that my teachers were wrong. The people that constantly told me that I would never do it were wrong. They were the one. That was the original motivation to be like, there's failure's just simply not an option. I have to keep going until I get there. And then as you go, you keep setting different goals. People keep telling you that's then not possible, So me competing in Australia or fishing for a living wasn't possible, and I did that. You wouldn't get a job out of fishing, and I did that. Wouldn't get this, did that, and then it was like, I'm gonna win the championship and be Angler of the Year in Australia. That's impossible. Everyone said never gonna do it, too young, and I did that. And then I'm like, I'm going to America. You'll never do it, and it was just always like that for me. I'm just always trying to be like, you can do it, and it's just going to take a lot of effort. But it was just not zero plan B, only
none,
just zero. Just if I don't make it, I don't know what to do. Like, I have no idea what I would do. It's like this only.
As we do these, it's amazing to hear your story, and I know everybody watching will think the same thing when they've seen the other ones with Jason Christie and Gerald Swindle and Jordan Lee. The stories are so similar. No matter where you're from, it's so crazy that fishing is this universal language, so to speak. But to hear you say the lake or the river or just fishing, that everything went away. That was my entire childhood. That was, and it's still my life today. Like it's whether it's a tournament or whatever. Like, that's where you go to just forget what's going on. And now it is our job. In different ways, fishing is our job, but it's still just, when I'm there, that's where I'm at, you know? So that's so awesome, man, that it got you through. And I too went through high school fishing didn't exist when I was in high school, but I tournament fished. I was getting picked on. I was outcast. My teacher, same thing. You can't make a living in fish. You crazy. And And I was like that. I bet.
Yeah.
Bet I can. So that's so awesome to know and that's where I guess in Fear My Heart came from that. That's
It's
your,
a bit
that's
of
your motto.
I have fighters in my family, and that fighting is in my blood. My cousin's professional boxer, my uncles were, and so I get that that Fear My Heart stuff. And that the worst part about fishing was I have this like energy and heart and like go, and you can't put that into fishing. It doesn't work. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like if you put me in with fighting and my cousin, he would be almost knocked down and like his hands would be broken, and he would just keep going, and then he would like get the win from just wanting it way more than anyone else. And my actually biggest problem through fishing has been wanting it so bad.
Get it.
And you're trying to put all this energy and effort, but it's not a sport. You can do that in certain ways, but also you have to chill out and relax. And that's what I've been lucky the last 5 years with meeting Kayla and stuff. That's what slowed me down and like let it happen rather than like going at it like you're going into a fight. Like you can't do that. It's a long game. And staying chilled out and relaxed, and you see the Christies and the guys that are phenomenal are relaxed and slow and methodical.
And the Geralds of the world, and you know, and some of the greatest fishermen I know are not professionals from around home, and they're just like you make it too hard sometimes, you know, and you can force it, but that hard work though on the preparation side, you're really great with your electronics, which helped in your win at you know out at 10 Killer.
It's the behind the scenes work I think that you do that I did. For me, where Fear My Heart came from and what happened was I was like, these guys have 40 years experience in front of me. They have this. Now what do I have? And I'm like, well, I can grind harder than anyone. I got a bigger heart than anyone. I'm never going to give up, and I'm going to work harder than anyone. So like the things that I could control, I put 100% into those things, and then didn't worry about that they knew the lakes way better than me. I did at the start because I'm like, how are you supposed to beat Van Dam on Toledo or beat
Kentucky
or
Lake?
Anyone?
Right, absolutely.
Even at the start. But I'm like, well, I'm going to be out here longer than all of these guys. I'm going to be fishing every single day. I'm going to put more energy and effort into it, and that's how I sort of got through. And I've dealt with that since I was young too, because I'd fished more than anyone, and I was like 15 years old, and guys would tell me that I didn't know or I was too young to know, and I'm like, I've been fishing this lake for 6 years already, 3 days a week through school and everything. I know about this place, and even though they were older, I was still trying to do more than them and be as good as them and learn. And that open mind and learning has been big for me. I've had influences in my life that come and go, and I've always had this thing where I'm like a sponge. Like you talk, I'm listening. I'm not talking, I'm just soaking it all in. And I did that in Australia from a kid. The older guys would see how keen I was to learn, and they would just unload this information on me. So when I got here, it was the same. It was exciting. It was new. I hadn't been here, everything. And so the guys would see how pumped I was about, just grateful to be here and wanting to learn, and people help you along the way. If you have a path and a vision and you go at it and give it everything you got, people will help you on the way. But if you don't have that, people aren't going to just come up to you and just help you for no reason.
Right.
But when you've got that mind, like this is what I want, people just come into your life from nowhere and help you get to
awesome.
there. So this, in 2008, when I won the trip and I was coming to America and I'm going to fish the US Open, I went and I bought this mat. So in 2008, and I hung it on the wall at the place I was living at, and it's gone now, but I had a Mike Iaconelli thing that said never give up there with the trophy over it. I stuck it there. And so every day I would look at the Bassmaster schedule, and then I would come here and I'd look where the lakes were and where everything was, and I'd see Lake Mead and where we were going to land. I just started studying like America. And so 3 years later, I moved here, had my truck, and had no GPS. And back then, you had all that stuff wasn't on your phone.
Yeah.
So I had this. I brought it over with me in my suitcase. I rolled it up, and this is how I'd like find my way across. Like I'd figure out where I was going to go from driving across. And I had to get to Little Rock, Arkansas one time to go as a marshal, and I was looking for it, and I could only find Arkansas, and I was like, where's Arkansas? And I was like, there's Arkansas, but no Arkansas. And so my very first year I was here, the only person I knew, I'd lost contact with Fred, everything. And I wanted to see an Elite Series event before I left. Nothing went right my first year. I was going to go home. It was done. And I figured it out, and I drove across, and it was Lake Murray in South Carolina. So I never...
drove from California.
Yeah, California, wrong side of the road, truck. I only followed Gary anywhere. And I said, I'm going to see an Elite Series event. I'm going to drop my boat off, and then I'm going to fly home, and it's over. And I drove across all the way, and I got to Lake Murray, and the Elite Series event was on, and there was 10,000 people there, and the bass set up and everything. And I was like, holy hell, this is where I'm supposed to be. And then I was watching the weigh-in, and this lady said, Carl, I was by myself in the middle of nowhere. No one knows I'm even over there. And I looked, and it was Julie Rombanis.
Unbelievable,
and she
man.
said, Fred's going to love to see you. I hadn't seen him in 2 years. And then saw Fred, and Fred invited me back to his place, and I was back going again.
And that was it, because you were done. You were done. You were like, I'm over.
I'd figured it all out, how to drop the boat off. I was using my truck, and I was packing my stuff up. I was going home.
What would you be doing if you were still in Australia? Had that not worked out, what is Carl doing? I know you said there was no option.
Yeah.
But what would you be doing?
Well, I worked in fish and tackle. Like it would be fishing, you know. Okay. I just loved it. But my cousin Chris, who's the boxer, he bought the big tackle store that I worked at.
Oh, wow.
I was on the border of that, and he bought it, and we got it going with him. And I flew over here. He chased his boxing dream, but he bought that shop. And I would say I'd be in my hometown, the shop, and doing all of that.
So,
stuff.
What's crazy is you drove right through the state. That would end up really changing things.
And what's crazy
right
is
next to Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas. Fred lived in Bixby, so I lived in Bixby. So Tim Keller was there. Like I lived in Oklahoma for all them years.
That's right.
I never got to fish Tim Keller. I fished around there, but that Oklahoma years helped me with Tim Keller.
Unbelievable, man. So this is awesome. That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
So we're on Jocumsen Mountain
Yep.
in Tennessee. He is a Vol fan officially. I'm naming him that. We have the only Australian Tennessee Vol. And dude, this place is amazing. Tell me why it's so special though.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Is we figured out that we love Tennessee. Kayla and I have been traveling for 5 years all over the whole country, and we'd never found a spot. We lived out of the Lance camper. We'd been living out of there and back in Dallas for 3 or 4 years. And we're like, man, we got to start looking at having a home base somewhere. Mm-hmm. And Kayla found this place and had the lake. This shop was set up. It was little living quarters in it. It was ideal. And I was like, man, this is meant to be. This is started last year. Well, we tried to get the money being a fisherman from Australia, all that stuff. It's hard to get the money, and it's hard to get a down deposit. We tried and tried, couldn't do it. Then the people that own this, they reached out and were going to help us do it all. So we were like, this is meant to be. We're going to get it again. So we went through all the stuff, paperwork, down deposits, and I still had to come up with this big chunk of money 1 week out from 10 Killer. And we rang him and we said, and I had a bad year last year. It just had a rough year. It's the end of the year. There's one tournament. We had to call them. We said, it's not meant to be. And they gave us our deposit back. And we said, sorry for everything. We went through 2 full things. Can't get it. Start practicing for 10 Killer. Win it on my birthday on the Sunday. Ring him at 8 o'clock Monday morning and said, we got the money. And here we are standing in it.
And look right there. That blue trophy is in the shop.
That is it right there.
That's it.
Lake 10 Killer.
Unbelievable.
Crazy.
I've got chills. I bet when you walk out there every morning, that's definitely like, hey, bud. Yeah, he's still here.
You have a good night?
Good. Yeah.
Sleep good?
I would probably sleep with it, but.
Yeah, I've had to kick it out of there.
Of course, you can't have a Carl interview of any kind without talking about this right here. Look at this.
Yeah, so in Australia we have barramundi and Murray cod, and the Murray cod are like a largemouth bass, but they get to 100 pounds. And they eat swim baits, spinner baits, top waters, all the good stuff. It's world class. And I sort of lost that over here. You've chasing the tournament, all year, and I didn't have that big fish deal that gets you like going, you know, that just chasing giants. And then that's when I started discovering the glide baits and the big fish in Texas. And once I got my first bite on it, I'm like, this is the deal.
And now you're designing your own swim baits from Mollix. That's crazy.
Own glide there from Mollix that's just come out. So Mollix have been awesome.
And you're one of, in my opinion, and I know maybe guys keep it under their hats, they don't talk about it, but you've had national tournament success on glide baits, you know, and you've really became a go-to. I've read a lot of articles, watched a lot of videos of you talking about it, but Guntersville, you fished a Costa Championship and just blasted them on it.
And they won.
Yeah, and everybody was fired up on that. And you caught, what was it, Champlain?
Champlain,
You had
back
a
to back.
huge northern largemouth.
I caught 5.5 and a 6.5 back to back on, no, I'm going to retire. This is the first mount I want to get, is that 5.5 and 6.5. Like mounted with that glide bait, because back-to-back casts, I boat flipped them both, ran back in with 22 pounds and made the 12 cut.
If I have my debit card, you won't take anything for this one?
No,
okay, because I would like to have that one, but I can't.
But that's been the thing, is learning how to implement the glide into the tournaments. That's what I put my energy into.
Because it's feast or famine, right?
There's a couple of niches that you can use instead of going all in with it. It's just using it little areas to either improve your tournament or get that one bite, not just solely relying on it.
And we're not going to tell you this. He's going to tell me off camera. He's going to tell me off camera. He's not going to tell you guys on Boats and Pros. There we go.
Nice.
Listen, the Purple Beauty is fixing to fly, boys.
I felt safer in the shop. But
you were a lot safer in the shop, let me tell you. Hey, don't let me forget. So, Carl, this guy that had this has a lawnmower battery for a cranking battery to conserve weight. So it's faster, I swear to God.
And we got current here.
And we got current. We may run to Nashville and not even know it. I'm so excited. This boy comes pulling up the ramp. You better bring your best 5, son. Come on, girl. Oh, what's that? Raw power. That's what that is. Just purring like a wallaby, buddy. Huh? Stay on topic.
Jackets on.
Yeah. A dingo, baby. That's what we're naming this one. This is the purple dingo.
It's all you.
It's all me from here?
Yeah.
It's not on me yet. I'll be honest, there's an energy that comes from this boat like no other boat I've ever been in. You can only drive a boat like this wearing a hat backwards. Let's see, let's let the flow out. I think we just punch it, see what happens.
Back on the trailer.
Yeah, a tidal wave of it. I just want to see if we can get on plane. Oh yeah, there she is. That was it. That was it right there.
Now we're good.
Now we're cooking. Now we're good. This is it. We should run all the way to lock through. We'll lock. Run out of this. Best boat yet, right? Yeah. This is it. I don't really want to make any kind of maneuvers though. It makes me really nervous. But we have these Mustang protection. Hang on.
Hang on, I need to get the little cord out and have it like ready.
You do. Every time I stop, you definitely do.
I need like an emergency parachute. Just pull it and all this.
Dude, this thing is like
it's a weapon.
He said it's a weapon. I need that to start this episode. I need Carl saying it's a weapon. It's a weapon. It is. It's like it is a bullet.
Yeah.
It's a weapon. Oh, here comes. Let's see. Let's give it the rough water test. Now, what do you think, Tanner? Now we start bringing it up a little. Oh, that's money right there. You know, it really doesn't flatten out for me though. For those of you keeping score, this is a 17-foot long boat with a 200 on it. I like how nervous Carl is.
I don't want to see this thing at full speed.
I don't think
It would be sketchy.
I'm not capable of even getting it close, I don't
Yeah.
think. Because I can't figure out how to get it on plane. I was full send right there, boys. Hang on, Tanner. You gotta drive this boat like this. This is the only way you can drive this. It's like this. Because there's no windshield, so you gotta have the steering wheel to protect you.
I survived the boat ride.
You survived the boat ride. Don't get hurt on the trailer.
Here we go.
Barney made it back. Barney is here. All right, so we heard from Carl about his wooden boat days. We took him out in the amazing purple Bandit Bullet, and now we get to see this Bass Cat that he gets to cruise around in. Tell us, how impressed are you by how far these boats have came from your wooden boat days?
Yeah, it's been good. You know, it's awesome to have like a progression. You know, I don't. It's hard to think like your kids or my kids in the future are gonna like this is probably gonna be the first boat that they step in or whatever.
Yeah.
But so I feel like I'm lucky that got to be in that little wooden boat and progress all the way through and see how far the boats come. But the appreciation I have for what we have right now, you need this to beat the best guys in the world. Like every little thing advantage that you can get. We're just talking about 360 this and that. Every little thing I can get is on this boat because without it, you can't beat these guys.
What top end speed do you get on this Bass Cat?
High 70s.
Here's the thing, I know you love your Bass Cat, but anytime you need to use the purple bullet
it out.
with the 200, it's a 17-footer.
there.
If you need to beat somebody to a spot on the Elite Series, you can use this.
It's there.
Carl, thank you so
Appreciate it,
much,
mate.
dude. Boats and Pros.